So nanocasting, here's some quick tools for you. And they're all in the book and more, but here we go. Facebook groups, the new version of Facebook groups, where you're basically creating a collaborative discussion forum within Facebook. Something happened to my typing there. It should be just vertical, it's not TV, it's just vertical specific sites. So I've seen a number of realtors successfully break up their marketing, their brand, by having rebranding through, a good example is Ian Watt out of Vancouver, who's got condogo.com. And it's really a discount condo site. Then he's got his high-end personal site, ianwatt.ca, and he's got a couple that speak specifically to his, what are they called again? Foreclosures homes, foreclosures. And so what he did is, versus trying to do it all off one site, he broke them up into nano markets and developed specific content blogs and information for each of those markets. And so he was able to engage all three of those markets without diluting his brand. LinkedIn groups and subgroups, offline events and seminars, meetups and tweetups. Again, what a fantastic way to engage nano markets, even if it's just getting 8 people together in a coffee shop of a specific interest in the community and hosting it, buying them all coffee, introducing them to each other. Webinars and podcasts, especially if they're geographically dispersed, and tags and Twitter lists, hashtags and Twitter lists. So for this event, there's a hashtag. And if you're interested to see what this specific nano market was doing today, you could search that hashtag and you'd see the whole conversation. In addition to that, your Twitter list, what they're going to enable you to do is, who's on Twitter, and once you started following 200 people, it got really noisy. Who uses Twitter lists, right? So what Twitter lists allows you to do is just put 10 people on the list, click that list, and only see what those 10 people are saying, and then engage them. So those are some nanocasting tools you can utilize. So important nanocasting tool is being sociable. Okay, a little promotion for our first book, Sociable, that Stephen Jagger and I wrote. But the whole meme is about connecting, going wide, getting to know people, but then driving intimacy. And this is something interesting that Malcolm Gladwell said. Malcolm Gladwell caused a bit of a stir online. Who's read any of Malcolm Gladwell's stuff? Tipping Point, right? What the Dog Saw. What was the other one? He wrote Blink. Fantastic books. Outliers is the other one. And one of the things that he talked about was that, look, he said, everybody talks about social media being revolutionary. And he said, but it's not. He said, most of you are not using social media in a revolutionary way. And according to Putnam, is it Putnam who wrote Bowling Alone? I think so. I'm asking the guys at Chapter going, come on, we've got 20,000 books. But Putnam wrote a book called Bowling Alone. He talks about the fact that your next job will most likely come from a loose connection. It won't come from your best friend, right? Your next job offer or your next deal. And then Gladwell said, that's all fine, but he says the next revolution is not going to be through loose connections. Whether it's a political revolution or whether it's a product revolution. And most of you are using it not in a revolutionary fashion. And he says the key, and he used Fidel Castro as an example, and he upset half the audience, but I thought it was a good example, is that he did not convince all of Cuba to revolt. He had a small group of people who were extremely passionate, and he focused on that nano market. He deepened engagement, he deepened passion, and that spilled over into a revolution. And that's how product revolutions are created as well. And so when we talk about nano marketing, is yes, you've got 500 LinkedIn friends in Toronto. But have we gone and aggregated those groups? Have we drilled down to the most important 50 and then deepened the relationships through additional content, through VIP treatment, through interaction, through getting it offline? So John Maxwell, here's a key factor. He stated that one is too few in number to achieve greatness. And I think that most of us, who would say that your goals in life are much bigger than your personal network? Right? They are in most cases. And so we need other people to get there. And they need us to get there. So there's 19 guerrilla social media marketing secrets that Jay put together, and I put together, and they all end in ENT. The first one that you heard was consent. That's one of them. Another one is dependent, is that guerrillas are not independent, they are dependent. They're dependent upon community, dependent upon customers, influencers, partners, and other guerrillas and customers. They develop a strategy to create a win-win dependency, or we could call it interdependency if we want. And so one of the things, and I'll give you a quick example of dependent, is when Steve and I launched Sociable, I had a meetup that had about 80 people show up every month, and he had a meetup that had about the same. And so we figured if we threw a book launch, maybe half would come from each. We'd still probably have 80. And that wasn't going to help us do the biggest book launch that the city ever saw. So how do we do that? What we did is we reached out to other influencers. And our core trading card was our social graph. So your social graph is when someone looks online and they search your name and they see you on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, on your blog, and they say, what is this person's influence and what is the image that's creating? And that's really your currency you use to exchange with other guerrillas online. So we went out to some other meetup organizers and said, look, we'd love you to, this month, instead of having a meetup, call it a sociable meetup, and it's going to be our book launch. In exchange for that, next time you have a big event, we'll do the same thing for you. Then we went up to techvibes.com, which is a major tech blog, and said, look, we're going to have a huge event in Vancouver. Cross our fingers. And we want to promote you guys as the media sponsor. Let your list know, but there's a lot of people in the business community who don't read your blog or subscribe to your newsletter. Would you be willing to get involved? Absolutely. Then we went up to Ideas on Tap, which does tech mixers in Vancouver, and they have big events. And we made the same offer. We also reached out to the local Board of Trade, old school, and said, hey, you guys need a booth because this community is not engaged, but we'd like to let your membership know. What ended up through that and through just tweeting, literally just a few tweets and some partnership, and really no more promotion than we usually do for a regular meetup, we had over 500 people come through in 3 hours. And to my knowledge, it's the biggest book launch that the city has seen, as far as numbers go anyways, and definitely alcohol sales. There was a lot of alcohol sales. And so we look at that. It wasn't about us finding and recruiting 500 people. It was about us going and engaging maybe 8. Understanding their values, understanding there was a commonality and a win-win. And we've done tons of stuff since then. And we really built something significant that lasted and had massive momentum. And so that's an example of tapping into online influencers or other guerrillas. If you don't have a social graph and you have nothing to trade, why are they going to promote you? So that's another reason why we want to have a good-sized following and an engaged community around us on the internet, is because it is our trading card today. So let's talk about planning and launching, then I'm going to wrap up. How much time do I have got?
15 minutes.
I still got 15 minutes. Awesome. So if you're going to plan and launch a guerrilla social media marketing attack, there's a few things we need to do. Number one, identify our nano markets. Actually, before that, before all of this is number one, guerrillas measure success not by friends and tweets. They do measure it by profits. And so we do want to look at our goal. And I would urge you, though, if you're not highly active in social media, not to have a 90-day goal, but have a 1-year goal. And then break it down into 90-day sprints. Because one of the other ENTs, one of the other guerrilla social media marketing secrets, is commitment. And commitment is really key. See, more money is lost not by bad marketing ideas, but by people quitting on good marketing ideas too soon. Right? And it really is the key. I'll give you an example, since I got a couple of minutes. This story is not a politically correct story. The story is about selling carcinogens, but it's a marketing story that Jay shared with me. And it stuck in my mind, has for years. And that is that he was part of the original team that created the Marlboro Man. How'd you like that for karma? Huh? But he's part of the original team that created the Marlboro Man. And what they did is that at that time, Marlboro was a woman's cigarette. It was number 31 in North America. And Marlboro came to his agency, and this Jay was brand new in his advertising agency at that time, and they said, okay, Jay and his team, we want to take this cigarette that's number 31, and we want to make it a more masculine brand, because although not as many men smoke, the men that do smoke more. So we want to own that market. And so they went away and brainstormed, and they came back and they said, cowboys. We're going to take a team of photographers up into the hills here in New York, and we're going to take pictures of guys on the dude ranch just doing what they do. And then we're going to put it on billboards and magazines, and we're going to imply this masculine part of the brand. And it was, back then and even for years later, we've all seen those ads in every magazine and billboard until, of course, it was outlawed. And so what they did is they blasted North America with this ad campaign for a year solid. And at the end of the year, it was bittersweet. Jay and his team came with their head down, kind of kicking rocks into Marlboro, and said, well, we've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is, anybody we ask, from a polling perspective, bar none, really feels that Marlboro is a masculine cigarette, that it's a guy's cigarette. They no longer see it as a feminine cigarette. The bad news is, last year we were at number 31. Any guess where they were at this year? 31. And they looked at the executive and they said, so what are we doing? Are we changing our plan? Are we fired? What are we doing? And he said, you told me that I had to be committed, that marketing and rebranding, good marketing takes time to grab hold. He said, so we're going to keep going. By month 18, only 6 months later, they're the #1 cigarette in North America and stayed there for years. I don't know where they're at today. But that's an example of commitment. Is that, we do 3 blog entries and go, oh, I didn't get any listings. 5 tweets, no one said anything. 3 videos, they were horrible. Of course they were. They're your first 3 videos, right? You're just learning how to focus the camera at that point. It takes commitment and time to get good at these tools, to build momentum, to build a tribe. We've all heard of the Gary Vaynerchuk story, right? WineLibrary.tv, no? He's a guy who just through video blogging took his family liquor store in New Jersey from $4 million a year in sales, which is not anything to really be ashamed of, to now over $50 million a year in sales. Just video blogging. It's really all he did. But what people don't realize is that it was his 148th show, and he did it 5 days a week that took off. Again, commitment. So have a goal and be committed to it. Number 1, identify your nano markets. Who are your nano markets in your community? Number 2, gather intelligence. Anytime before a good guerrilla, whether we're business or military, launches attack, they go out to outposts and they gather intelligence. Your home base is your socialized website or blog. You need a website where people can socialize and interact, add comments, have multiple methods of communication. But where you gather your intelligence is out on Twitter, out on LinkedIn, out on social search, out on Google Alerts, out in the community. Once we've gathered that intelligence, we understand what unique content and communications we can deliver to those nano markets. That's what George was doing by listening about who's talking about lattes and why people use his store for meetings and what they hate about Starbucks and what they like about blends and vice versa. And that's when he then finally launched his attack. Build content and conversations for each nano market. Number 4, work your social media calendar. So in the book, and it's pretty straightforward anyways, let's see if I can find it. There's a social media calendar. But if you don't want to buy the book, you don't have to. You can actually download, if you Google Shane Gibson social media calendar, you'll find it on my blog and you can download the PDF. But here's what it does. It gives you the tools you're using down the left-hand column, and even if you do buy the book, download the PDF and the Word document because then you can customize it. And then week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and you write down basically what you do. Think about it this way, is that any blog post or tweet is like a musical note. Does that make sense? And just hanging out in the middle of nowhere, it's just a note. And if you bang a bunch off, it's just noise. But imagine this is like your music sheet. And if you look at your theme and goal for the month, and then you develop, say, what blog entries are going to do that, and then what am I going to tweet about, and what should happen on Facebook, and what social media listening should I do, and what events should I attend or should I have, and you put them all together in an organized way, instead of noise, you have a symphony from a marketing perspective. Most people in their regular marketing don't have a calendar, and in their social media definitely don't, but it's a key advantage. We need to drive it through, because how are we going to know if we're successful if we don't have a calendar? Or how do we improve if we don't have a calendar, then record what's been working and what hasn't, and adjust. Then 5th is target and connect with influencers in community as well. So remember, you know what, we're probably going to need not 500 connections, but 5,000 to get to where we want to go. And so we can either take the slow road and build it ourselves or reach out to influencers. And then number 6 is constantly refine and augment. Constantly refine what we're doing and constantly asking what's next. Why was Wayne Gretzky successful? When we ask him why he's successful on the ice, what did he say?